All right, and for our next talk, we have Ido, who is a big data architect at Intel. Please give him a warm round of applause.
Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining. My name is Ido. I work at Intel, and I'm going to talk about how we are using wearables technologies and big data analytics in order to enable breakthroughs in Parkinson disease research. So, a little bit about us. So I'm a part of a big data analytics group at Intel. We're developing solutions and products which are leveraging big data edge technologies and self-developed machine learning algorithms and stream algorithms. Our department develops those solutions both internally to Intel for manufacturing, for example, or sales and marketing, and externally, such as the project that I'm working on, healthcare mobile, for example, and IoT solutions as well. We have in our team developers, data scientists, and system analysts. Myself, I'm a big data architect that is working on leading edge technologies, mainly focusing on IoT and healthcare projects. So, how did it all start? How did we even get to running such a project? So, the name of the man on the left is Andy Grove. He's one of Intel founders, and he has Parkinson for the past 20 years. The story begins one day when Andy reads an article in the New York Times which is talking about big data analytics. He then contacts Michael J. Fox Foundation, and together they decide to start an effort about big data analytics, wearables, and Parkinson disease research. So I'm not a doctor, but I'm going to provide some details about the Parkinson disease. So Parkinson is the degenerative disorder of the central nervous system. It's mainly characterized by serious motoric disabilities or symptoms such as tremor and slowness of movement. It is also characterized by non-motoric serious symptoms such as low sleep quality and depression, which are serious as well. Currently, today, there are around 6 million Parkinson patients around the globe. 1 million of them are in the US. In the US only, 1 out of 100 people over the age of 60 is a Parkinson's disease patient. In addition, there are 60,000 new discoveries of the disease every year. There is no cure for Parkinson. All the medications out there are only for relieving the symptoms. So they are just, their purpose is just to make it easy for the patients. As well, there is no progression marker, and there is no standard test for monitoring this disease. Everything is subjective, and it is subjective to the patient's report to their doctor and to the doctor's opinion. So, we're running a project, but what are we trying to achieve? What challenges are we trying to address? So one of the main challenges is the lack of objective measurements. So actually today, the only time that Parkinson patients are being monitored is during their clinical visits, which happens once in 3 to 6 months. During those visits, those patients are not behaving normally. They are stressed, and the reports that they are providing to their doctor are subjected to their opinions. In addition to that, doctors which are seeing those patients so rarely needs to assess the disease progression, and they are doing it only based on the patient's reports, which again are subjective, and to their own subjective opinion. One more challenge that we're trying to address is clinical trials. So clinical trials costs are measured in the scales of millions of dollars, and they are very hard to conduct and very hard to complete. It requires a lot of efforts. Also, the technology that is required to conduct such trials costs money, as I mentioned before. And in addition to that, it's not very easy to put on patients. Because of that and because of what I've just said, actually the average number of patients in such a trial is less than 100 patients, which is very low for a clinical trial. One other challenge that we're trying to address is many patients today would like to contribute to research. They really like to do it, but they just can't because the current measurements are not allowing it. So how are we going to solve this solution? What are we going to do? So theoretically, the solution is very simple. All we're asking patients to do is wear a watch like this Pebble watch that I have here on my hand and start an application, a simple mobile application. So it's not that simple. Practically, we're asking the patients a lot. We're asking them to put the watch on them all the time, and they won't do it if we won't provide them some value. If the value won't be greater than the burden that we're asking them, they just won't do it. If we'll be able to achieve this, then we'll have objective data that is being collected 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. And from this data, we can actually get insights. We can actually get value to these patients. So I talked about the challenges. I talked about our practically solution. But who is going to use this? What are the use cases that we're trying to address? So when data is being sent from the clock to the watch, we are applying from the clock to the cell phone. We're applying a set of complicated algorithms in order to achieve some measurements, to calculate some measurements. So this analytics is being applied on the cell phone and on the way to the cloud and on the cloud later. So all of our data is being saved into Intel Big Data Cloud platform. And from there, who is going to use it? So first of all, researchers, for the first time, have access to free data, free reliable data, objective measurements of thousands of patients. Clinicians, doctors can see how their patient really behaved in the past few months. And finally, pharmaceutical companies will be able to easily test their medication effectiveness. They will and they are conducting clinical trials using this solution. So I would like to talk a little bit about the application itself and what we are giving to those patients. So on the upper left side, you can see the objective measurements part. In this part, this is what I've mentioned before. We are actually, for the first time, calculating objective measurement on Parkinson disease patients. So you can see that we have the tremor. We can have tremor is the shaking symptom for Parkinson patients. We're calculating activity levels, sleep quality, gait quality for those patients, and showing them those on graphs. I will show two of those features later on. We are also allowing patients to report stuff. So it is very important for patients to manage their medication alerts. Because if they will miss a medication, it's not a good situation for them, so we're allowing them to do it. As I mentioned before, we are providing value to those patients, even if it's not related to big data or to analytics. We would like to provide this value. Other features that we're providing those patients, so we are allowing them to report how do they feel, and later on they can see those results. We're providing other non-analytical features, some tools, a metronome tool, for example, which helps Parkinson patients to walk. So after giving the background, I'll dive into the big data technologies within our system. So, as I mentioned before, we have built the Parkinson solution on top of an IoT platform developed at Intel. And I'll shortly describe the layers, and I'll dive into two of those in a moment. So, Our solution is based in Amazon. It is on the cloud. It allows us better communication with the outside world, which is not allowed within our organization. The batch layer, which I'll elaborate on later on, is based on Apache Spark, and we are conducting analytics in this layer. Storage layer, based on Cloudera Enterprise Data Hub, Hadoop, HBase, and MySQL for metadata. I'll talk about it a little bit later. The ingestion layer is a multi-protocol layer which allows ingestion of massive amounts of data into the system. It uses Mosquito currently in this solution for MQTT communication, Kafka as our durable, persistent, and scalable data broker, and Akka as the actor system, which allows us to ingest the data concurrently. For Stream Analytics layer, we are currently using the Akka with the reactive system solution. We have examined Spark streaming at the beginning. It was not that stable 2 years ago when we've started with this platform, actually. It was lacking some capabilities that were added and will be added in the near future, such as back pressure handling. For the service layer, so we are providing a set of APIs to our clients. The mobile is actually communicating with with our REST APIs, we are using Play, Phoenix to query HBase, and HBase client for several other usages. Finally, as the user interface layer, so we have the Pebble Watch, which we're presenting notifications and other statuses to our patients. We have an Android application, which is generally available, which provides all the features that I showed you before. And we are also in the final stages of developing the iOS application. It will be soon available in the store for patients who would like to use the solution. So complicated but interesting system in order to provide answers. So a little bit about the storage layer. As I mentioned before, we are using HBase and Cloudera. We're using HBase as our main time series scalable database. It allows high writes throughput, and it also allows us to randomly access data in order to present it to our patients. We are using MySQL for metadata. We have started with using HBase for metadata, actually, but fast and quick find out that this is not a good solution for that. And once we've struggled with that, we've decided that metadata representation, which is relational, needs a relational database, and we've switched to that. So a little bit about our batch analytics layer, which uses Spark. So it is based on Apache Spark. I don't need to talk about Spark. All of you knows it. It is based on a set of machine learning algorithms that we've developed in our team. One of the main reasons for that is that Parkinson patients has their own needs. Not the standard algorithm, for example, for gait is not applying on those. So we are developing our own algorithms, and we're executing those. So a few of the capabilities that we've developed in our platform that is using Sparks. First one is a rule engine. Rule engine, the actual engine does not need Spark, but it allows simple and complex rules and alerting. We are using Spark for our baseline calculations. So in order to provide complex rules, we need to calculate baselines before, baselines of the data, of the sensorial data or for the patient's data. And for that, we are using Spark over large data sets of data for these patients. A second very interesting one is automatic change and anomaly detection. So this is one of the interesting tools that we've developed, and it allows automatic alerting on top of streams of sensorial data. So the way it works is that it learns using, again, statistical models and machine learning algorithms, the normal behavior of the sensors. We are using Spark in order to do that. And for that, and afterwards, we are applying those models on the stream in order to extract those alerts and notifications. Last one, we have developed an data export capability on top of Spark. So our researchers would like to access the data, and usually those are large sets of data. So we are using Spark in order to transform the data. Some of the transformations are very simple, such as date conversions, but some of them are a lot more complex. And that way we're exporting the data to those researchers and anyone else that is authorized to see this data. So let's talk a little bit about challenges that we had with Spark from the beginning. So we started using Spark starting 0.7 or even 0.6. And on those phases, we encountered a lot of backward compatibility challenges. So often when we've upgraded versions, and we have upgraded versions pretty frequently, we had to either change the code to work with the new versions, or to recompile it against the new versions in order to make it work. So it was, I must say, it was at the beginning. It has improved a lot during the last versions, but it was a challenge that we've encountered at the beginning. Spark over HBase. So when we've started using Spark, the documentation about Spark and HBase together was very, very limited. So we have struggled a lot on how to execute it, how to tune it, what is the proper caching size, how Spark distributes its work, etc. So a lot of challenges there. You need to take into account that back then there were no connectors to HBase, which today are available. So we kind of did everything on our own. Sorry. Yarn integration. So we've started using Yarn from the second it was released, Yarn client and Yarn cluster mode. So there were some difficulties there, missing parameters and things that we needed in order to execute on Yarn. For example, distributing files into the executors, or distributing files or libraries into the driver when it is running on Spark cluster mode. So using a team at Intel, which contributes to Spark, we have raised those issues, and those were fixed following our work. So most of our data scientists came from the normal processing board and developed algorithms for R or for non-distributed tools. So one of our challenges was actually to educate those people, the data scientists and the algorithm developers, on how to think distributed, how to build algorithms distributed, and it is not trivial. It's complicated to teach people that for years developed algorithms in some way to work on a different way. So another major challenge that we had. When we've started using Spark initially, we have tried to apply practically any use case to use with Spark. So one of the use cases that we've actually tried with is using it as our interactive reporting layer. So users applies requests to our UI or to our REST services, and then we've tried to pull this data with Spark. Usually not a large amounts of data, but we've decided that it is a good way to go. No, it's not a good way to go. It didn't go that well. The performance, the low latency did not exist. We've tried to adjust it and to configure it properly back then, but still, we've abandoned this way eventually and learned that for some usages we need to use different tools. So execution of many small jobs. So in part of our solutions, for example, the rule engines, some of the jobs are not running on large data sets. So we had to run a lot of jobs in different frequencies. And for that, we've used Spark. So initially, we've just initiated a Spark context per each of those jobs. So it didn't work well, mainly because Spark context consumes memory, and it takes time to load. Eventually, we've moved to a mode when when we've created an actual service which holds one Spark context, and our solutions or products are submitting requests to this service. And we allowed the Spark job management system to manage those jobs, and it worked great. One last challenge that I'm going to talk about is regarding to Spark context driver garbage collection issues. So I'm pretty sure that most of you are familiar with that. In previous versions of Spark, garbage collection was a real pain, and we have struggled with it a lot. I think that only starting version 1, the garbage collection really improved and allowed automatic garbage collection. But until then, we had to adjust different parameters, such as time to leave, in order to make sure that the memory is not leaking and is being cleaned. So enough complaining. I would like to present 2 analytical features that are related to the Parkinson disease. Let's start. So the first one that I'm going to talk about is activity level. So when we are putting a new feature into our solution or into our application, first we are asking patients on what do they want. And this is the first thing that those patients wanted. Why? The main recommendation for Parkinson's disease patients is to move, is to be active. When they're active, they feel better. This is the main doctor's recommendation. And those patients usually do not know how much they're active. They can assume, they can guess, but they don't really know it. And this is our way to giving them this solution. So you can see here the graph, and in this graph, you can see the activity level of a patient. You can also see the medication taking. So a patient can mark when he took a medication, and then he can actually see how this medication affected his activity levels, which is very important for them to assess the medication effectiveness on them, because not every medication fits to every patient. Second thing that there is in this feature is the activity threshold. So we are measuring per day how much active those patients were. So high activity level for those patients. But we are doing it in an intelligent way. So we're not setting a one threshold. We're actually calculating threshold, the high activity threshold for each and every patient, because each patient behaves differently, and we wouldn't want to create any frustration with the patient because there is a fixed threshold. So very interesting feature. Helps a lot to patients and to clinical trials when those are conducted. Here you can see an example of an activity level. So those 2 sessions were recorded on the same times on the different clinical trials. On the upper one, you can see patient that took his medication, and you can see its high activity level. And on the lower one, you can see patient in an off state, which means he didn't take his medication. Then you can see that activity level is almost half low. One more thing to say about those 2 tests, those are control tests, so patients did exactly the same operations in both of them. One more feature that I would like to share is nighttime analysis. So it is not that known, but a lot of Parkinson's disease patients suffer from low sleep quality. And in this feature, we are calculating the movements level for those patients and presenting it to them. So again, in here you can see 3 colors that represent 3 different levels of movement: minimal, moderate, and extensive. And what we're allowing patients here are actually 2 things. First of all, to see how well they slept during the last night. Second of all, is to plan their medication taking during the night. So during the night, Parkinson disease patients are waking up to take a medication in order to sleep better for the rest of the night. With this feature, we are allowing them the visibility on when they usually wake up, and then they can set an alarm and take the medication whenever they really need it, not just on top of a hunch or a guess. So again, really important feature. A lot of good feedbacks on this one. Short example on this one. So we can see here a nighttime analysis for a healthy person and a Parkinson's disease patient. So you can see the huge difference between the sleep quality of a healthy person and the patient. So a little bit about trials and partners. Who are we partnering with and what we're actually doing with it. So this is only a partial list. I won't go through all of them, but you can know that we are working with hospitals for trials, research institutes like Scripps, which are conducting a clinical trial with our solution. Radboud University here in the Netherlands in Nijmegen. Again, a large trial which will eventually get into thousands of patients. And the Michael J. Fox Foundation, which we have a tight cooperation with, which helps us getting to patients. We currently have around 500 patients connected there, and we're aiming for thousands in the near future. So what's next? In terms of the scale, so we're going to scale up. I would like to scale where we'd like to get to thousands of patients here in the Netherlands and in the US. We're seeking to add more clinical trials, more use cases to this solution. We are developing the iOS application, which will be generally available soon. We're testing additional wearables in order to make sure that if someone has an iWatch, for example, or Android wearable, he would be able to use the solution as well, and not to limit them only to Pebble. And of course, generating more value. In terms of the platform, so we would like to develop some more capabilities to this platform. We would like to extend our insights gathering from this data. So we have a lot of data sits in the cloud, and we are getting some insights from the data using batch operations, but still we need to gain some more, and here Spark would help to achieve this goal. Our next actually big feature is to provide a web portal to clinicians, and it's something that we're working about, and it will be in place. So that's it. Thank you for listening. Questions?
You mentioned that you developed your own machine learning algorithms. Can you talk a bit how difficult or how easy you found to do that?
Sorry, I can't hear you.
So you mentioned at the beginning that you developed your own machine learning algorithms because the MLlib didn't support what you needed. Can you expand on how difficult or how easy you found to do that?
So developing machine learning algorithms or stream analytics algorithms in our cases, it's not simple. So for that, we needed some labeled data, first of all, because otherwise it is, again, it's not standard data. It's not, those are patients which behave differently than normal people. So what we did, we conducted trials where we gathered data and we gathered control data. So we've asked patients to come to the clinic. We've filmed them, and we have asked them to do specific operations. And then we can, for example, saw, okay, this one is labeled as tremor. This one is labeled as activity, and this one is not. This one is gait, and this one is not for those patients. And there is a difference between normal people and patients. So this is how we're doing it. In addition, again, as I mentioned at the beginning, we have a set of data scientists which are PhDs and are working hard to develop those algorithms on top of this gathered data.
Okay, we're out of time for questions. Let's give a big hand for Ido.
Thank you.